Hey, Anthony Tilley here, and welcome to a very special Solopreneur show.
Welcome to the Solopreneur show with your host, Anthony Tilley. To get your hands on more great business training and advice, plus the chance to join our free Facebook group where you will see extended guest interviews and behind-the-scenes access to Anthony, go to www.thesolopreneurshow.com and join us today. And here's your host, Mr. Anthony Tilley.
Hey, Anthony here, and welcome to the show. It really is great to have you with me today. And as I said at the top, this is a very special show. Today we have my interview with Mr. Robert Kiyosaki, of course, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, the interview itself was conducted a little while ago, and we had an amazing chat. And in the interview, Robert reveals why the rich are getting richer, how and why you should become financially educated, and why the system is trying to keep you down and basically breeding employees rather than entrepreneurs, and how you can get out of that. He also as well goes into great depth explaining his cash flow quadrant as well. So if you've not read the book, if you don't know about that, you really need to be listening to this. So Robert really gives some great insight into how to financially train yourself. And also as well, he reveals the two passions that both of us share. And one of them, I was quite surprised. I knew a little bit that he was interested in this, but really didn't realize to what extent. So it's really interesting stuff. Now, I think really it's just time to crack on, to bring up the curtains, and to listen to my interview with Mr. Robert Kiyosaki. I'm joined today by the author of a personal finance book that many people consider to be the seminal work of its kind. And of course, that book is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And the gentleman I'm joined by today, it is a great privilege, Mr. Robert Kiyosaki. Hey, Robert.
Anthony, how you doing? Thank you very much for having me on your program.
No problem at all. Thank you very, very much for joining us. It really is a pleasure.
Thank you.
So, normally at this point, what I like to do is ask people about their background and their past, etc. But of course, that's all laid out in the book, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary. So I know obviously you've sold millions of copies worldwide, but I'm sure somewhere there must be somebody listening to this show, watching the show, who doesn't know the Rich Dad story. So if you could share that with us to start, that would be absolutely wonderful.
Yes, my name is Kiyosaki. It sounds like Kawasaki. I wish it was, but it's not. I'm fourth generation Japanese American. The great grandparents came to Hawaii as laborers to work in the sugar plantation fields. And so I'm the fourth generation. And my dad, in the Japanese community, the way out of the plantation or off the plantation was by school, getting an education. And so my father was a straight A student. In America, it's called a valedictorian. Went to Stanford, University of Chicago, Northwestern, and was a PhD. So when I was in school as a kid, my father was the head of education for the state of Hawaii. So education was like a religion. We all went to college. We had to get college degrees, and it was everything. And the only problem was when I was in the ninth grade, I happened to just by chance go to a school with rich kids. And here I am, a kid basically off the plantation, but going to school with rich kids. And I knew there was a difference, and they were all white. And I said, is it my skin color? And then I realized there was a different type of education. So there's something wrong. So I raised my hand when I'm 9 years old, and I asked my school teacher, I said, when are we going to learn about money in school? And the teacher, another white woman, she goes, the love of money is the root of all evil. It's the Judeo-Christian ethic. I'm going, wait a minute, why is it evil? She says, well, why am I in school? So I'm 9 years old, I'm questioning all this dogma. And I was a problem kid at that time because I don't understand it. I said, well, what am I in school for? She says, so you can get a good job. And I said, but isn't that to get money? Why don't we just learn about money so I can bypass the job?
Cut out the middleman.
And I said, why? And I was really confused. So I got in a little trouble, and I went home to talk to my dad, who was the head of education. And she says, well, she's correct. Your teacher's correct. We don't teach about money at school. And I go, why? Why am I in school? To get a job? Isn't a job one way of getting money? And so finally, my old man, poor dad, calmed me down. He says, go speak to your best friend's father. He says, he's one day going to be a very rich man. So I said, okay, so what is he? He said, well, your best friend's father's an entrepreneur. I said, what are you? He says, I'm an employee. And our school system trains us to be employees. And I said, so what's an entrepreneur? He says, somebody doesn't need a job.
He's your man.
I said, that sounds good to me. So, and that's how Rich Dad, Poor Dad started. I went to see my Rich Dad, and that's how the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad becomes. And it's a story of what two fathers, my best friend's father, who was Rich Dad, and my dad, who was Poor Dad, a PhD, taught their two sons about money. And the reason I'm a fairly wealthy man today is not that I'm rich, it's just I'm free. I don't need a job. I don't need a paycheck. I work all over the world. I do what I want to do. So then there's another thing called job security versus financial freedom. Mm-hmm. So that's why in 1997, which was 20 years ago this year, I published Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so the 20th anniversary of Rich Dad, Poor Dad's coming out. And I wrote it so everybody could understand why the rich are so much richer than everybody else. As you know, the gap between rich and poor, excuse me, is expanding. And in my opinion there's many reasons for the expansion or the gap between rich and poor. But a primary reason is our school system ignores the subject of money. We learn nothing about money at school. We're taught to be slaves to the corporation, the employer, to the government. Now that's fine if that's what you want to do. That's not what I wanted to do. So I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
For young people watching this, obviously this is the Solopreneur Show, but for young people watching this, or for anybody who wants to increase their financial education, increase their financial IQ, what are the key things that they need to know to learn?
Well, first of all, the worst thing about education is important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not jumping on it. Education is vital today. The question is, why do we ignore financial education? That's the question. And I think the most powerful word, or not the most, there's a lot of powerful words, is the word ignore. And so what we have is a lot of highly educated people that they go to Harvard or Oxford and all this, but they're financially ignorant. You say they're not stupid people, they're just ignorant. So this is my way of answering the question. So I was at a meeting with a bunch of highly educated people. Several had 2 master's degrees, a lot of PhDs. And at the table, so my wife and I were kind of my wife is Kim. She wrote the book Rich Woman. She's very smart. Yeah. And so she was on the phone with our tax accountant. And we were discussing this and that and this and that. And so all these highly educated people who unfortunately were Hillary and Obama fans. So we were kind of quiet. I want to say this, Anthony, they had no idea what Kim and I were talking about. They had not a clue. So they were very proud that one guy had a master's in finance and this and all, but they didn't know what we were talking about. And what Kim and I were talking about is how to structure our finances so we can get to zero taxes. And they had no idea how you get to zero taxes. And so when one of them got angry at me because of this ignorance, to say, well, you guys are crooks. You're like Donald Trump. Because Trump doesn't pay taxes either. You know what I mean? Obama pays taxes. Hillary steals. She doesn't have to pay any tax on that. But I'm not Republican or Democrat. I'm a comedian. And Trump doesn't pay taxes. But they didn't have the guts to ask me, well, how do you not pay taxes legally? So they don't know that. But because they're ignorant, they can't admit they don't know something. And I'll give you the answers really quickly. If you do what the government wants you to do, the government gives you tax breaks. For example, if I donate money to charity, I get tax breaks. If I'm an employer with more than 500 employees, I get tax breaks. If I invest in what's called multifamily housing or housing, real estate for people, I get tax breaks. If I drill for oil, I get tax breaks. I don't get tax breaks for having a job. I don't get tax breaks for saving money. I don't get tax breaks for investing in what Americans call a 401k or retirement plan. But because these highly educated people are financially ignorant, they had no idea what Kim and I were talking about. And at that one, we had to get this thing done before the end of the new year. So that's why we're kind of being rude at this meeting. Saying, well, Kim, let's move this. We're moving money, legally moving money. So it saved us $465,000 just by moving that money legally. And the government sanctions it because the government wants us to be their partners. Now, if you understand that, you're no longer ignorant. I don't say you can do it or you should do it, but ignorance is bliss. And that's what's going on in the world today. And the reason I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I'm glad it's the 20th anniversary now, because people are more willing to hear what I'm saying.
Yes.
But I don't pay taxes legally. Trump doesn't pay taxes legally. But if you're, excuse me, a PhD from Harvard, you get very angry. Well, you're a crook. I said, how could I be, excuse me, actually standing here telling you I do it legally, but you call me a crook when the government sanctions it? You see, that's ignorance. And that's why I'm not saying you should do it. I'm saying this is what financial education does. Gives you more control over your money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting. Over here in the UK, there's been a few celebrities over the last couple of years who have been highly criticised for what is seen by the establishment as avoiding tax. But at the end of the day, like you say, they're not breaking the law.
No,
So if the rules are in place or things are in place to allow people to do that, why wouldn't they do it?
Well, this is the irony of it, Anthony. The tax laws are English laws. You see, the English did rule the world at one time. But back around 1819, they transferred the flag to the United States. Remember that? I mean, do you realize the American flag is the flag of the British East India Company?
Really, Joe? I've never thought that. It's a cracking program about that.
Yeah, it's the stars. It's the stripes of the British East India Company.
Yeah.
So when England started goofing around and America was coming up, they transferred flags to. They say Betsy Ross in America, so did and George Washington. Now, it was you bloody English guys came over here and took over America.
I'd like to apologise for that. Okay, yeah, as you say, that really, I guess it's almost a way. I'm probably not going to put this sort of quite correctly, and I'm sure you can sort of give a much better answer. But it's almost like their thought is of the establishment of corporate kind of money versus entrepreneurial use of money. Does that?
Yeah, it's a little bit more. It's not that complex. It's how you earn your money. You see, in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, lesson number one is the rich don't work for money. So very few people pick up on that. The moment you work for money, you're an employee or you're self-employed, you pay taxes. And so if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I don't work for money. I don't have a job. I'm not qualified to work anyway, but anyway, I don't have a job. I don't want a job because the moment I work, I pay tax. So the cliche is have your money work for you. Yeah. So the moment I'm a professional investor, I don't work, I get tax breaks. But if I have a job, I'm a good, hard-working man or woman, you pay tax. This is what our school system doesn't tell you. They tell you, oh, go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, get out of debt. Everything they tell you is a taxable event.
It's just how that hamster wheel works, isn't it? It's a self-propelling kind of thing. They breed people to work so they can come out, pay the taxes, and keep everything working.
And you know why I get tax breaks? Because I have employees.
Yeah.
You see, if I came to Jolly Mary England, I said, look, I'm going to bring 10,000 employees from my Hyundai plant to England, I get tax breaks.
Yeah.
The employees don't. You see, that school system was designed to teach people to be employees or self-employed people, like doctors and lawyers. They don't teach you to be rich. So that's why the positioning statement on Rich Dad, Poor Dad is what the rich teach their kids about money. The poor and middle class do not. The poor and middle class go to school.
Yeah. So, just touching back on the book, I like that. It made me smile, and it was before you went to see your rich dad, but it did make me laugh because I think this is just so ingenious. Could you tell the audience the story of? Well, I suppose we could just call it counterfeiter. your money story, because that did make me laugh.
Yes, I am a professional counterfeiter. No, you know how kids take things literally. So I said, well, Dad, how do I get this? I'm still 9 years old. How do I get rich? And he says, well, you have to go make money. So I said, okay. So I had to figure out how to make money. So what I did was in science class, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. In science class, we're studying metallurgy. And so we're melting stuff down. Kids like to melt things down. So I got toothpaste. Back then, toothpaste tubes were made out of lead. Can you imagine that? Poisonous material. Yeah. So I was melting down these toothpaste tubes. And then my friend and I cast, out of plaster of Paris, we cast a $50, American $50. And we cast a $50 out of lead. The trouble was, lead is malleable. It bends. So we had to go smaller. We tried a quarter. That didn't work either. So finally we got down to a nickel. The nickel was okay, but the dime was the best. So then we got better at engraving. And pretty soon we were producing nickels and dimes. My father comes home and he goes, what are you boys doing? I said, oh, we're making money. And he goes, you're counterfeiting. I went, what's that? But this is the point, Anthony. I was very close to the truth. Today, all currency is counterfeited. It's printed. The Bank of England, run by a guy that used to work for a company called Goldman Sachs out of Canada. Trump we have the Federal Reserve Bank. They counterfeit money. We have the ECB, the European Central Bank. They counterfeit money. We have, the Deutsche Bank. They counterfeit money. And the Bank of Japan, the Bank of China. You see, they understand one of the reasons the rich get richer is they can print their own money. So what I covered in Rich Dad, Poor Dad very simply was how the rich print their own money. Very simply for a kid to understand. I have a new book coming out called Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. It's Rich Dad, Poor Dad Grad School. Why the rich are coming out richer, which is real financial education, is coming out in May or June of this year. But that's how I print my money. So I went into more detail. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad is the basic book. And Why the Rich Are Getting Richer is the advanced version, graduate school. So you want to go to graduate school, start with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then read Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. And you'll understand why, excuse me again, I print my money. It's called debt. See, I use debt. Everybody in school is taught to save money. Yeah. Trump and I use debt. Hillary steals. She had to shut down the Clinton Foundation finally because the contributions stopped coming in when she lost. The Clinton Foundation, in my opinion, I could be wrong. I'm not Republican or Democrat. I have no axe to grind on that. I just call the dog, you know. Yeah. So they were selling favors. If you donate to the Clinton Foundation, you get this. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But they have to shut that baby down.
Interesting stuff. Obviously, from over this side of the pond, yeah, we've just sort of been watching from afar and just seeing the mad circus that appeared to be going on over there. And it's made fascinating viewing.
It's just a reality show now. Politics is a reality show. In America, with this guy called Jerry Springer, it's the Jerry Springer show. Yeah. Or it's like you have Graham Norton or something like out there. Yeah, that's him. That's what politics is. Yeah. It's just it's a tragedy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you said earlier about how obviously we're 20th anniversary of Rich Dad, and how the ideas now are probably getting more accepted than they were back then. I wonder if a lot of it perhaps has to do with the same reasons. When we look at the fact that Trump's got in, the fact that the UK is Brexit, this kind of thing. People are actually sick of the establishment and the way that they feel like they're being treated by it.
Amen. And by the way, Rich Dad, for those who have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, thank you for having read it. But the one coming out this year is the 20th anniversary. The content of the book is the same. Rich Dad, Poor Dad remains the same. The 20th anniversary gives the reasons why I wrote that book and why everything I was saying came true. For example, in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I said your house is not an asset. And then there was the biggest real estate crash in the history of the world in 2007. I said savers are losers, and today we have interest rates, -0, below zero in certain parts of the world. So all the people that were saving money are wiped out. So the Rich Dad, Poor Dad 20th anniversary, even if you read the original book, please get the 20th anniversary version, because you'll get my logic, why I was saying what I was saying in 1997. I was saying it as a warning of what is happening today. So you called it right on. It was just a warning, and it happened. Your house is not an asset, the rich don't work for money, and savers are losers.
Okay, as ever, we're going to bring the curtain down at the 20-minute mark, and already I'm sure you can see Robert's really, you're getting value for money when you interview somebody like Robert Kiyosaki, a gentleman with a huge amount of knowledge, and is not afraid to say what he thinks as well. That was the interesting thing. This is most definitely the most controversial interview that I've ever conducted, and if you want to hear the rest of it, you need to get yourself to thesolopreneurshow.com/Robert Kiyosaki, where you'll be able to enter your details and get full access to the interview. And as I said at the top of the show, Robert goes on to explain in depth the CashFlow Quadrant and why the rich are getting richer, and really why you want to be moving within that CashFlow Quadrant from employee through to solopreneur. And he's really very, very complimentary about what we're doing here on the show and on the need for people these days to become entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, to basically create their own wealth, create their own income, and develop that freedom lifestyle, but also as well create that income so they're not relying on somebody else. And that obviously is the whole premise of Rich Dad Poor Dad, and is to generate your own income to become financially independent, financially educated as well, and understanding how money works. And he also goes on to talk about debt and how there's bad debt and good debt, and how he leverages good debt obviously to make a very, very nice income. So, end of the show today. And as I said, you've seen the first 20 minutes there, some great stuff that Robert has shared. And to see the rest, solopreneurshow.com/Robert Kiyosaki. Get yourself inside. And of course, all the other great interviews as well. There's lots of other interviews that I've done with very, very great people who've got just immense knowledge and a huge amount to share. And that is what this show is all about. This show is all about helping people to create themselves a home-based business, giving them the inspiration and the education that they need to pick something that is right for them, so they can either profit from their passions or from other people's passions as well. We've had many guests who've talked about leveraging other people's knowledge. In particular, Neil Stafford and Rob Temple have both talked about that in great depth within their interviews. So if you get yourself to the solopreneurshowcom, get yourself on the inside, you'll be able to see the full interviews and really build your own education, your financial education, product creation education, just a whole range of great topics that we cover within there. And there's a lot of great plans for the show as well going forward. So it won't just be these interviews. There's a lot of great stuff coming. So I really highly suggest you get yourself on the inside. So when they happen, you're going to be the first to know. So that said, end of today's show. I really look forward to seeing you on the inside. And I'll see you again next week. Cheers. Bye now.
To get your hands on more great business training and advice, plus the chance to join our free Facebook group where you will see extended guest interviews, the opportunity of free one-to-one coaching, and behind-the-scenes access to Anthony, go to www.thesolopreneurshow.com and join us today.